up on this Monday edition of Newsline at noon, President Park Geun-hye returns from a successful trip to the Middle East, during which she secured deals to broaden Korea's cooperation with the Arab nations in the medical, ICT, and food sectors. The Korean government decides to front-load all of its economic recovery budget for this year in the first half in a bid to give the economy a much-needed shot in the arm. Plus, U.S.-based North Korea experts warn the Obama administration and its allies that North Korea's nuclear threat is becoming more dangerous by the day. These stories and more on Newsline at noon. It's noon Monday, March 9th here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in. Live from Seoul, I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
It's very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this afternoon, President Park Geun-hye returned from her week-long tour of the Middle East this morning, has paid an impromptu visit to the U.S. ambassador, hospitalized after last Thursday's knife attack.
Upon disembarking, the president headed straight to Seoul's Yonsei-Severance Hospital, where Ambassador Mark Lippert is recovering following surgery and 80 stitches to the deep gash on his face. President Park's visit is being seen as a display of the strong Seoul-Washington alliance despite the appalling attack. It also comes a day before Lippert is to be discharged from hospital. While in the UAE, President Park consoled the U.S. ambassador over the phone and vowed to closely cooperate with Washington to resolve the issue quickly.
So, President Park is back on Korean soil after a very successful trip to the Middle East. On the final stop in Qatar, the Korean leader held talks with the Arab nation's emir to discuss ways for Korea to take part in his country's preparations for the 2022 World Cup.
Now, the two sides also agreed to expand cooperation in a wide range of areas such as healthcare and education. Choi San reports.
Qatar, the host of the World Cup in 2022, plans to spend $100 billion to build facilities, railway and roads ahead of the international sporting event. Korea has participated in major state infrastructure projects in Qatar for years, and now Korean companies are hoping to win orders for some $30 billion worth of World Cup projects to construct long-distance railways, roads, sewage treatment facilities, and World Cup stadiums. Meeting with the Qatari Emir on Sunday, President Park Geun-hye said there are so many potential areas of cooperation and that she's encouraged by Doha's great interest.
We believe Korean companies have an advantage in entering the Qatari market because their know-how and technology and infrastructure projects in the Middle East are highly noted.
The Qatari Emir said his country is ready to further develop and solidify the bilateral cooperative relationship. Seoul and Doha are also seeking to increase their investments in each other's economy. The leading Qatar Investment Authority Fund is reported to be interested in several Korean projects and is negotiating a $2 billion investment venture with the Korea Investment Corporation to enter a third country together. In the service sector, the two leaders have agreed to systemize the training and hiring of Korean workers in Qatar's airline, education, and healthcare industries as the word is spread about Koreans' work ethic and credibility. Seoul and Doha have also agreed to strengthen cooperation in the fields of nuclear energy and healthcare. Choi San, Arirang News.
It's going to be a busy week at Korea's National Assembly as a number of minister and other government office chief nominees will be in the hot seat for their confirmation hearings following President Park's cabinet reshuffle last month. The first two hearings for the nominees to head the Ministry of Land Infrastructure and Transport, Yoo Hee-ho, and Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries, Yoo Ki-jun, began this morning. They're being grilled on a number of allegations such as tax evasion and earnings speculations. The sessions are expected to get heated, especially with by-elections coming up in April. Next up is Financial Services Commission Chairman nominee who will face his parliamentary hearing on Tuesday. The ruling 70 party has vowed to pass a bill requiring that security cameras be installed at daycare centers nationwide at the Assembly's April extraordinary session. Public demand for the legislation grew following a string of child abuse cases at daycare centers in recent months. Last week, lawmakers voted down a law revision proposal that included the surveillance camera requirement. Lawmakers who objected the bill say it would be a violation of their privacy and infringe on daycare teachers' rights. The ruling party says it will rework the bill to address the privacy concerns and reintroduce it during next month's session.
Evidence is mounting that North Korea is taking significant steps forward in regards to its nuclear weapons program. Researchers in the United States say U.S. efforts to solve Iran's nuclear matters have been distracting Washington of late, allowing Pyongyang the freedom to boost its arsenal. Our Kim Young-gil has more.
U.S. researchers are saying North Korea's nuclear weapons program has gathered significant momentum and that these programs could expand rapidly over the next 5 years. A recent report by the U.S. Korea Institute at the School of Advanced International Studies of Johns Hopkins University concludes that Pyongyang could increase its stockpile of 10 to 16 nuclear warheads and expand it to 100 in the worst case by 2020. The report highlights the North's efforts to upgrade its technologies to produce road mobile and solid fuel missiles. Most of North Korea's missiles use liquid fuel. Still, many technological uncertainties remain, including how much fissile material North Korea can produce and whether scientists or engineers can overcome the steep technical challenges. Despite the challenges, Pyongyang has surprised the international community before with its nuclear capabilities, such as by revealing a uranium enrichment plant in 2010. The report advises having a clear-eyed view of the North's nuclear weapons capabilities to keep the North in check. The Washington Post says the latest report is enough to prompt the Obama administration to action, as Washington is currently more focused on the Iranian nuclear issue. Washington seems to have turned its attention to Iran's nuclear ambitions after failing to negotiate a tentative deal on Pyongyang's nuclear weapons programs back in 2012. Meanwhile, Seoul-based Yonhap News Agency reports, citing diplomatic sources in Washington, the U.S. might push for direct talks with North Korea next month and could use its international clout to stop the North from upgrading its nuclear capabilities. However, the sources note that the Iranian nuclear issue is more of a priority for now. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
A summit between the leaders of China and North Korea could be on the cards soon after Beijing's top diplomat said President Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un could meet at a time when it is, quote, convenient. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said the two countries have a strong foundation and should not be affected by what he called temporary events. Kim is expected to travel to Russia this May for an event marking the 70th anniversary of the Soviet Union's victory over Nazi Germany in World War II. The North Korean leader has not made the short trip to China since taking power in 2011.
Stay up to date on the latest news out of Korea. Connecting to our team of reporters about the issues that matter to Korea. On air, on your mobile, online. Find out more about Korea on Newsline at noon with Mark Broome and Eoh Jin-joo.
I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
Market researcher, strategy analytics, said Thursday that LG Electronics.
The Korean government is doing all it can to revive the sluggish domestic economy. It has decided to spend all of this year's economic recovery budget in the first half. Shin Se-min tells us more.
The Park administration is planning to invest 10 trillion won, or roughly $9 billion in the first half of the year to help lift the economy out of the doldrums. The money is part of a $41 billion revitalization fund set up by the finance minister last year. The ministry had earmarked $9 billion this year from the remaining $13.5 billion for this year. The government hopes to increase the minimum wage and stimulate domestic spending to prevent the economy from falling into deflation. Finance Minister Park Geun-hye has repeatedly emphasized the need to raise the minimum wage to revive the economy. The government says it'll also use the funds to garner investment, create more jobs, and provide more welfare benefits in line with the country's drive to reform the economy. And the ministry plans to monitor the funds twice a month. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
And there are growing calls for an increase to the minimum wage in Korea, but latest data shows Korea's lowest legal wage is neither that high or that low compared to other OECD nations. According to data released by Economic and Social Development Commission and Korea Employers Federation on Monday, the annual minimum wage stood at just over $12,000 in 2013, ranking Korea 14th out of the 25 OECD member countries. However, workers and labor unions in Korea say the minimum wage is not something that can be compared by only looking at those numbers and not something that should be compared with other countries. They say there's a huge imbalance between corporate earnings and household income, and the current minimum wage fails to meet even the standard cost of living. Korea's central bank is coming under enormous pressure to slash its key interest rate to head off the possibility of Korea falling into deflation. Other countries have been quick to act, so the market is keeping a close eye on what kind of a decision the Bank of Korea will make at this week's rate-setting meeting scheduled for Thursday. Son Jung-in reports.
Alarm bells are ringing for Korea's top economic policymakers after recent data showed the country's inflation rate grew slower than Japan's last year for the first time in over 4 decades and actually recorded negative growth last month. Finance Minister Park Geun-hye has expressed worries that the Korean economy could be headed down a deflationary path similar to Japan's 20 years ago.
We are deeply worried that the economy is slipping into deflation amid prolonged low consumer price rises. Excluding an increase in cigarette prices, Korea's consumer price growth has moved into negative territory.
Some are demanding the central bank roll up its sleeves to address the worsening situation. Unlike Japan and the Eurozone that are slashing interest rates and easing their monetary policies, Korea has kept its rate steady at 2% for the past 4 months. Amid growing pressure to lower its interest rate, the Bank of Korea is paying close attention to the growing value of the Korean won against the yen and the euro.
Korean exports to Japan and the EU plunged in January. We are watching the appreciation of the won against their currencies.
The Bank of Korea's next rate decision meeting takes place on Thursday. 18 countries have cut rates in the first quarter of 2015. Experts say Korea needs to do the same to help the country's exporters retain some price competitiveness in global markets. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Samsung Electronics saw its net sales in Korea slump to an 8-year low last year. According to an audit report, Samsung's domestic sales came in at $18.7 billion in 2014. That's down 9% from a year earlier. The weak performance of its mobile division has dragged on its domestic sales. Samsung's mobile division saw its net sales tumble nearly 20% to around $10 billion last year. 1 week has passed since Samsung Electronics unveiled its Galaxy S6 and Galaxy S6 Edge smartphones to an enthusiastic public at the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. Now that the excitement has calmed a bit, how were the devices received? And will they be enough to cement Samsung's position as one of the premier players at the top end of the market? Song Ji-son reports.
Samsung's distinctive blue and white flags welcomed more than 90,000 visitors to the Korean company's booth at this year's Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. And this year, the spotlight was on Samsung's latest Galaxy S6 smartphone models. With its slimmer design and wireless charging system, the unique look and feel of the phone was what captivated crowds the most.
I noticed that it felt different. It's not like the previous Galaxy S smartphones because Samsung has done a great job with the design of the phone by making the front and the back sides of glass and putting this great metal frame, this very sturdy frame around the device. It's durable, yet it looks amazing.
While the Galaxy S6 was grabbing the most attention, a market follower wanted Samsung spectators to drop by its booth too. Just across from Samsung sits Huawei, the world's fourth largest handset maker. As the event's official sponsor, Huawei had the most floor space, and the Chinese company did not waste an inch of it, displaying everything from handsets to Internet of Things devices such as CarPhi, setting up a Wi-Fi environment in a moving car.
And we are very happy to see the friends from everywhere visit our booth, have a discussion, how we benefit from that, and also how we want to share with all the friends what we have in our R&D and our understanding for the future's roadmap.
Huawei also unveiled its first smartwatch, and while its features are not as advanced as those offered by its Korean rivals, the company is expected to gain ground quickly, as 13% of its annual revenue is pumped back into R&D. That's double the 6% Samsung has set aside for R&D over the past 2 years. Market watchers say Korean manufacturers like Samsung and LG are going to have to up their game if they want to stay at the peak of the global market. 송지선, Arirang News, Barcelona.
Now, it's fair to say that animated characters are loved by people all over the world, and Korea's character market has been taking huge strides forwards in recent years.
And for this week's Industry Insight, we take a look at where Korea stands right in this particular market and what it can do to go to the next level. Kim Min-ji has this report.
This 90-second cartoon featuring two larvae and their quirky adventures inside a dream is entertaining enough to attract viewers both young and old, even without dialogue. Created by Tuba Entertainment in 2011, Larva is now broadcast in over 100 countries and is being made into more than 1,000 products.
From the early stages of development, we focused on multinationalization. Body language is somewhat universal, so we could easily create a sensation across different markets.
But it's just one of few success stories. Korea has a relatively short history in the character business and lacks infrastructure and global networks. On top of this, there's still a deep-rooted perception that cartoon characters are just for kids.
Disney's Frozen is an example of an animation that can be enjoyed by the whole family. Korean characters need to target people of all ages, as a larger consumer base will boost the market.
So where does Korea's industry stand? The local character market has grown over 60% in the last 5 years, and it's expected to top $8 billion this year. But despite the exponential growth, it makes up less than 5% of the global market. Analysts say the government needs to open communication channels for local companies to connect with distributors and licensors from around the world. Case in point, the Culture Ministry plans to invest $350 million into the character and animation industries over the next 5 years.
From the fostering of artists to facilitating production and exports, we plan to provide companies with comprehensive assistance.
Roy Visual, creator of hit animated TV show Robocar Polly, says the drive is sure to boost Korea's potential.
Korea has the manpower, so with systematic support for the process of creating a character or animation, local companies will be able to create stronger and better content.
With the right reinforcements and time, experts say Korea will be able to produce characters as iconic as Mickey Mouse. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Time now for a look through the global headlines we're following this Monday lunchtime from Seoul. For that, we connect to Eunice Kim at the News Center.
Eunice, let's begin in Russia. Authorities there have made 5 arrests in the ongoing probe into who killed outspoken Kremlin critic Boris Nemtsov, and all 5 are said to be of Chechen origin.
Yeah, that's right, Jin-joo, and 2 of those suspects have been charged by a Moscow court, but who ordered the killing and with what intention remains to be seen. Connie Kim has this story.
A Moscow court has charged 2 men accused of plotting to kill Russian opposition leader Boris Nemtsov, an outspoken Kremlin critic. Zaur Dadayev, a former police officer who fought Islamic insurgents, admitted he was involved in the killing, while the second suspect, Anzor Gubashev, pleaded innocent. Russian state television showed the men's arrival in court wearing handcuffs and covering their faces. 3 other suspects have been jailed, and all 5 men are of Chechen origin. A 6th suspect reportedly blew himself up with a grenade in a standoff with police in the Chechen capital of Grozny. Nemtsov was assassinated in late February, days before he was set to address a major anti-government rally. He was also to publish a report on the Russian military's involvement in the war in Ukraine, despite Moscow's denial that it has supplied separatists with troops and weapons. The biggest question now is who ordered Nemtsov's assassination. Some of his supporters have gone so far as to say the Russian government was behind the killing. Russian officials deny that, and President Vladimir Putin has condemned the killing and pledged to do everything to find and prosecute the killers. Nemtsov's shooting is the most high-profile killing of an opposition figure since Putin came to power in 2000. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
And over to Africa now, where the Nigerian extremist group Boko Haram has reportedly pledged its allegiance to the Islamic State group building its own so-called caliphate in Syria and Iraq. An audio clip believed to be the voice of Boko Haram's leader, Abu Bakr Shekau, was posted on the group's Twitter account over the weekend. In it, he declares IS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi as caliph of the Muslim world. Meanwhile, sources on the ground say a major aerial and ground offensive was underway against the militant group near Nigeria's border with Niger. Boko Haram has been striking terror in northeastern Nigeria in an ongoing 6-year campaign to carve out an Islamic state in the region. And finally, Sunday marked exactly 1 year since Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 vanished on its way to Beijing, together with the 239 people it was carrying. Relatives of the missing marked the anniversary with grief and bravery.
This is why I am here speaking to you today. This is why I am here going through this heart-wrenching episode, talking about my feelings. It's not easy. But I'm doing it because I need to know that I've done everything that I can for my mother, even if she's not here.
Nathan helped organize a memorial in Kuala Lumpur where attendees signed a tribute wall and a petition to urge the search continue until the plane is found. Also on Sunday, a 584-page interim report was released by an independent investigator showing that the plane's captain and crew were mentally sound and that the battery of a flight recorder had expired more than a year before the flight. Grieving family members in China called the report meaningless, saying it offered no new evidence nor cleared doubts into Malaysia's pronouncement in January that the event was an accident. Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott said the search effort has scoured about 40% of the 60,000 square kilometer patch of sea floor where the plane is believed to be. He echoed sentiments expressed by his Malaysian counterpart that he is reasonably optimistic that the plane will be found.
What a dramatic change in temperatures in just 2 days. From mid-April-like temperatures to late February-like weather today. In fact, it will get chillier as the day goes on. And please be prepared for a freezing cold morning tomorrow with a low plunging to -7 here in the capital. Well, the whole nation had a cloudy morning, but things are brightening up as the day moves along. And here are the readings for today. The daytime high here in the capital will rise to 6, and that's about 9 degrees lower than yesterday. But Daegu and Busan should still enjoy spring-like temperatures, topping out at 14, and Gwangju tops out at 9 this afternoon. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island and Daejeon should see a high of 9 and 7, and Dokdo peaks at 10. Now, thankfully, it will be a brief cold snap tomorrow, and the readings will jump back to the mild side on Wednesday, but it seems like readings will remain remain below the seasonal averages throughout the week. Well, that's all for me today, and hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.
Well, thank you, Tian, for the weather update, and that brings us to the end of this edition of Newsline at Noon.
Jin-joo and I will be back at the same time on Tuesday. Until then, goodbye.